The wait was the worst part. Paul Sheldon lay in the darkness. He was frozen, not from the cold, but from fear. Annie Wilkes had been gone for hours. She was out there, somewhere in the storm, reading the final pages of Misery's Child. She was reading the part where Misery chastened the character she loved more than any living person dies in childbirth. Paul stared at the ceiling. He counted the cracks in the plaster. He knew what was coming. He could feel it like a change in air pressure before a hurricane. Then he saw it. Twin beams of light swept across the wallpaper. Headlights. The engine of the Jeep rumbled and then died. Silence returned to the farmhouse. But it was a heavy silence. Then came the sound of the car door slamming. Thud. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet night. Heavy footsteps crunched on the frozen snow. Then the front door opened. Paul held his breath. He heard a scream from downstairs. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of pure animal rage. No, no, no. Something glass shattered against a wall. Then the footsteps started up the stairs, heavy, fast, thundering towards his door. The door didn't just open, it exploded inward. Annie Wilkes stood in the frame. She looked huge. She seemed to fill the entire door. Her face was blotchy and red, her eyes swollen from crying. But she wasn't crying now. She was vibrating with anger. "You murdered her," she shrieked. Spittle flew from her mouth. "I didn't," Paul started. "You murdered her." She raised the heavy hardcover book, Paul's own book, high above her head, and she brought it down, right onto Paul's shattered legs. The pain was white and blinding. It wasn't just a hit, it was a detonation. Paul screamed until his throat tore. She was good. Annie screamed, hitting him again. She was the only good thing in the whole world, and you killed her, you dirty bird. She grabbed a flower vase from the nightstand and threw it against the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. She overturned the table. Water pitched everywhere. She was a natural disaster. "I didn't kill her," Paul gasped, tears streaming down his face. "I'm a writer. I just wrote the ending." Annie stopped. She leaned over the bed, her face inches from his. Her eyes were dead black holes. "No," she whispered. "You didn't just write it. You killed her because you wanted to." She stood up. She smoothed her skirt. The sudden calm was more terrifying than the screaming. "I'm going to punish you, Paul," she said. She reached out and grabbed the bottle of novel pills from the table, the only thing keeping Paul's agony at bay. "You need time to think about what you've done." She walked out. She locked the door, and Paul Sheldon was left alone with the pain. Time lost its meaning. Paul didn't know if it had been hours or days. The pain in his legs woke up. It started as a throb, then became a roar. But the legs were the easy part. The withdrawal was the real torture. His body needed the novel. He started to sweat, cold, clammy sweat that soaked the sheets. He started to shake uncontrollably. He saw things in the corners of the room, shadows that moved. He called out for her. "Annie, please, I'm sorry." His voice was weak, cracked and dry. He was no longer Paul Sheldon, the wealthy, famous author. He was a junkie. He was a broken animal begging for a treat. He tried to crawl to the door to pound on it, but the pain in his legs made him black out. He lay on the floor, weeping. "Please," he whispered into the dust. "Please." He would have done anything for a pill. Anything. And Annie knew that. That was why she waited. She was breaking him. She wasn't just breaking his bones. She was breaking his will. Finally, the lock clicked. Paul looked up, squinting in the light. Annie walked in. She looked refreshed. She was wearing a clean uniform. She didn't look at Paul on the floor. She looked past him. She was pushing a wheelchair, and strapped to the seat of the wheelchair was a small portable barbecue grill. Also on the seat was a can of lighter fluid and a box of matches. Paul didn't understand. "Get up, Paul," she said softly. "It's time for your medicine." She lifted him back into bed like he was a ragdoll. She placed the barbecue grill on the table next to him. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the manuscript. Fast Cars, the only copy in the world. There were no carbons, no backups. 2 years of work. His masterpiece. His freedom from misery. She placed the stack of paper onto the cold metal grate of the grill. "It's filth, Paul," she said. "We have to cleanse the filth." She squirted lighter fluid over the pages. The smell was sharp and chemical. "I have the pills right here," she said, holding up the bottle. 2 of them with water. Paul stared at the pills. He could almost taste the relief. "But first," she said, handing him a matchbook. "You have to do it." "No," Paul whispered. "Please, Annie. It's the only copy." "I know," she smiled. "That's why it's a sacrifice. Light the match, Paul, or I go away again, and the pain comes back." Paul looked at the pills. Then he looked at his work. His soul screamed no, but his body screamed yes. His hand shook. He struck the match. The flame flared up, yellow and blue. He held it over the paper. He hesitated. "Do it," she commanded. He dropped the match. The lighter fluid caught with a whoosh. Orange flames licked up the sides of the stack. Paul watched as the pages curved. He watched his characters die. He watched his best writing turn into black flakes of ash floating in the air. He was crying, not the tears of a man in pain, but the tears of a man whose spirit has been murdered. He had chosen the drugs over his art. Annie watched the fire with a look of holy satisfaction. "There," she said. "Doesn't that feel better? All clean." She handed him the pills. Paul swallowed them dry. He closed his eyes. He wished the fire would take him too. The next morning, the grill was gone. The ash was cleaned up. In its place, Annie brought in a beast. It was a vintage Royal typewriter, heavy, black, industrial. She slammed it onto the table. She placed a stack of blank white paper next to it. "You killed her, Paul," she said, her voice matter-of-fact. "Now you have to bring her back." She told him the title of his next book, Misery's Return. "I want you to write it for me. I want you to make it right. Misery didn't die. It was a mistake." She leaned in close. "And Paul, it better be good, because your life depends on it." Paul sat up. The novel had numbed the pain, but he felt hollow inside. He looked at the machine. He pressed a key, the letter N. Nothing happened. The key was broken. The type slug was missing. "It's missing an N," he said dully. "I know," Anne said from the door. "You'll have to fill them in by hand. Now, Paul looked at the blank white page. The prison wasn't just the room anymore. The prison was the page. He began to type. Clack, clack, the sound of a man digging his own grave. Subscribe for episode 3, because next time Paul decides he isn't going to just write. He is going to fight, and Annie is going to bring the axe.